Puff Daddy?
Your friend Kyle told me you don't understand the importance of voting. Apparently you haven't heard of my Vote or Die campaign.
Vote or die? What the hell does that even mean?
What do you think it means?
Every 4 years, Americans who are 18 or older have a big responsibility. Our votes decide who becomes the President of the United States. Unfortunately, the U.S. election system isn't that simple. This is electing a U.S. president in plain English. It's easy to imagine every U.S. citizen's vote being counted together on Election Day, but this is not the case. U.S. elections are not decided by the total or popular vote, but individual states. Let me explain. It starts with your vote. On Election Day, you'll vote for president and their vice president. You get one choice. Then, all the votes in your state are counted. The candidate with the most statewide votes becomes the candidate your state supports for president. This happens across the country until each state has selected their candidate. We end up with most of the 50 states and the District of Columbia voting to support one candidate each. But there's a problem. We can't elect a president by just counting up the choices of these states. U.S. states are different. Consider this. California has about 36 million people. Kansas has less than 3 million. We need a way for California's choice to have more influence on the election because the state has more people. The question becomes, how do we make sure each state has the right amount of influence on the election? Well, we need a way to account for the population of each state. As an example, let's consider my home state of North Carolina. Like every state, it is divided up into congressional districts that are based on population. North Carolina has 13 districts, California has 53, and Kansas has 4. When it comes to a state's influence on the election, the number of districts matters most. More population equals more districts equals more influence. The influence a state has in the election is measured by the number of electors. This number comes from the number of districts in a state plus the number of U.S. senators, which is always 2. North Carolina has 15 electors, while California has 55. When a candidate wins the voting in a state, they win that state's number of electors. That's why big, populous states can be so important to candidates. Their electors add up quickly, and the number of electors is what really matters. Here's why. If you add up the electors of all 50 states in the District of Columbia, there are 538 in total. The candidate's goal on Election Day is to win the majority of 538, or 270 electors. Once a candidate wins enough states to reach the 270 majority, they have won the election and become the president-elect. Then, on the following January 20th, the president-elect is sworn in as the next president of the United States. And it all starts with your vote. Make it count. I'm Lee Lefevre, and this has been Electing a U.S. President in Plain English on The Common Craft Show.
In a fair democracy, everyone's vote should count equally. But the method that the United States uses to elect its president, called the Electoral College, violates this principle by making sure that some people's votes are more equal than others. The Electoral College is, essentially, the 538 votes that determine who wins the presidency. If these votes were split evenly across the population, every 574,000 people would be represented by one vote. But that's not what happens because the Electoral College doesn't give votes to people, only states, which has some unfair consequences. An American who lives in one of these states has their vote for president count for less than an American who lives in one of these states. In some cases, the Electoral College bends the results just a little, but if you live in a particularly large or small state, it bends them a lot. One Vermonter's vote, according to the Electoral College, is worth 3 Texans' votes, and one Wyomingite's vote is worth 4 Californians'. Now whoa, hold on there, son, you might be saying to yourself right now. You're missing the whole point of the Electoral College, is to protect the small states from the big states. Give the small states more voting power and the presidential candidates will have to pay them more attention in an election. If that's the goal of the Electoral College, it's failing spectacularly. Here's a graph showing the number of visits the presidential candidates paid to each of the states in the last 2 months of the previous election. If it looks like there are a few states missing, you're right. Only 18 of the 50 states received even a single visit from a candidate, and just 2 of those states, Maine and New Hampshire, have very small populations. The area of the country with the most small states is conspicuously missing. The Electoral College doesn't make candidates care about small states. But interestingly, the biggest states, California, Texas, and New York, are missing as well. So what's going on? Looking closer, just 4 states, Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, received a majority of the candidates' attention during the election. And if you follow the money, it's the same story. Why do candidates spend so much money and time in so few states? Because the way the Electoral College works forces them to do so. The elections are winner take all. As long as a candidate gets just over 50% of the popular vote in a state, he wins 100% of that state's electoral votes. That means winning by millions of citizens' votes is no better than winning by a single vote, so candidates are safe to ignore states where they poll with big margins. Instead, the Electoral College makes candidates intensely interested in the needs of just a few states with close races to the detriment of almost all Americans, which is why it should be abolished.
Bad for you, bad for America.
He'll put us back on track.
Hester ran our state into the ground. Now he wants to be your senator.
Stand up. Say no.
Stand up and say no.
Bad for you, bad for America.
Vote for this guy.
Vote for this guy.
Aren't you tired of this stuff? Why is it that every election season it becomes impossible to hear the facts over all these misleading ads? And if it seems the problem is only getting worse, that's because it is. We can thank the Supreme Court for that. In 2010, they decided that it would be just fine for corporations to spend as much money as they want telling us who to vote for. Wait, why are corporations telling us who to vote for? Let's get something straight. This is a democracy, rule by the people. I'm a person, you're a person, and Chevron, not a person. So shouldn't elections be all about what people want? Good jobs, safe products, healthcare, responsible government, clean air and water. It turns out the vast majority of Americans want to see a lot more done on all of these things. But what people want is going to take a back seat as long as corporations can spend millions getting lawmakers elected. Oil companies have gotten politicians to block laws protecting our climate. Manufacturers have pushed through trade agreements that gut product safety and help ship jobs overseas. Insurance companies have been the first ones consulted on health reform, and giant corporations have gotten bailouts and subsidies. Maybe that's why all kinds of people, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, are totally frustrated with our government.
It's the government!
It's easy to get angry, but it's time we got smart and realized that the heart of our problem is not that we have bad lawmakers. We have a democracy in crisis.